Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 184. I sat down with Frederick Falk. He is a mentalist and a magician, and you may have seen him on Fool Us with Penn and Teller. You may have seen him at the Magic Castle in Los Angeles, or any number of places. He is an extraordinary talent and a really great guy, and he showed up here, full dapper down suit, looking so sharp. I loved it. We talked about all sorts of things, really fun, and I'm excited for you to listen. He mentioned a lot of books and references, so I definitely will put those on the links page on heyhumanpodcast.com. Other stuff, of course, social media, Hey Human Podcast. Check out my personal website, susanruth.com. Email me on heyhuman at susan@heyhumanpodcast.com. What else? Oh, if you shop Amazon, do so through the Amazon portal on the front of heyhumanpodcast.com, and that helps support Hey Human as well. All right, let's get into it. Here we go. Frederick Falk, welcome to Hey Human.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I'm super excited. So how about that?
You said you hadn't had a mentalist on before.
I have not.
Okay.
I've had, I haven't had a magician either, and you're both those things.
Well, yes.
Now, is that traditionally a mentalist? Ooh, I love your ring.
Oh, thank you.
How fabulous is that? Is that an heirloom?
No, it's. I was given this when I graduated from Marine Corp boot camp.
Oh.
Yes.
Thank you for being in the Marines.
Yes. Welcome. Thank you.
I just read that that service men and women don't like to be thanked, that they'd prefer to be that you go like donate to the causes or do.
Yes, and it's funny having just passed Veterans Day and also the Marine Corps birthday, which are a day apart. The Marine birthday is November 10th, and then of course the next day is November 11th, Veterans Day. I see the articles pop up every year. Everybody feels differently about it. I didn't ever serve in a combat capacity. I was a musician in the Marine band, which was its own kind of animal. But I knew that when I enlisted, I auditioned before I enlisted to make sure I passed the audition process before I signed my life away.
Yeah.
So I took more of a unique route that many people really aren't aware of that I talked to. They're like, oh, you can do that?
Yeah, I'm actually curious about that too.
Every branch has its own musical units, but it's a very niche profession.
And what's the purpose of it too?
Well, it's going back many generations, many centuries. That was the purpose. The fife and drummers keeping cadence, the buglers call in retreat or advance. That's
in war.
Yes. That's why you see in old paintings and photographs and such, the fife and drummers especially are right up front there with the standard bearers, the flag bearers. And that's how you could call the cadence. The officers would give a command, and either the drummer or the fife or the bugler would then play that. And you would say the advance, retreat, cavalry front. That's and also morale and the tradition of it. It goes back all the way to, well, for the Marines, all the way back to Sousa, who runs very deeply in our blood.
Wow.
So it was because growing up, I thought I wanted to be a musician professionally. A clarinet primarily.
Okay.
I taught myself trombone as well in high school because I got sick of playing the clarinet charts in pep band, which you can't really hear. And I thought, if we're going to be playing Louie Louie and Tequila and Build Me a Buttercup in stadium band, I want to play something that's got a good chart to it. So the trombone had the best brass line. So that was a little detour. But then this opportunity to audition for the Marine Corps music program just fell into my lap my senior year of high school. So I thought, oh, what the hell? Why not? Do
you still have to go through basic training?
Yes, boot camp, same as everybody else, combat training, rifle qualification, swim qual, yes.
Oh, there's a swim qual.
Yes.
Oh, wow, interesting. Yes. Well, I guess that makes sense because it's
yes.
Yeah.
So I was stationed on Oahu, which was terrible. It was awful. Traveled to corners of the globe I was scarcely aware of, that was an education at 18 years old.
Absolutely.
So,
how old are you now?
31.
Okay, you look quite young.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Bless. Moisturize, kids. Moisturize.
Yeah.
Especially in California.
Oh, God.
And stay out of the sun and drink lots of water.
Dry here.
Yes.
I drink 7 times the amount of water.
Growing up in Wisconsin, where it was just grossly humid in the summers. Mm-hmm. just you walk outside and you feel like you have to shower.
Plus, all that beer and cheese keeps you hydrated.
Well, yeah, the cheese anyway. Yes.
What's your favorite cheese?
Well, there's a thing, and living in LA for as long as I have, and having friends who are from so many different places, because that's what LA is, right? Nobody I know is from here, or very few. But when I say cheese curds, people give me like the dog, like the tilted head thing. Like, what? You can't really describe it without having it. It's a little kind of a lumpy little piece of cheese. It's not like a perfect little ball like mozzarella. You can have them fried or just, I prefer them in the summer when they're made fresh. They're called squeaky cheese curds. That's how you know they're fresh, because when you bite into them, they kind of squeak against your teeth. I know that sounds really bizarre, but it's a thing. Like I guess it's like beignets for people from Louisiana. It's everybody kind of, or the New York versus Chicago pizza war.
What's a cheese curd taste like in comparison?
Well, they usually come in either white or yellow cheese. Oh. So it's.
I think the word curd maybe throws some people.
Right. It's like, is that like you think of like cottage cheese, like the little curd? But no. It's they vary in size, but usually they're the size of a quarter or so, and it's just you have to try it.
Right now, everyone from Wisconsin that's listening
is thinking,
matter where
yes!
they are, they're all salivating,
yeah.
And they're all thinking, oh, cheese curds.
When I was stationed on Oahu, my high school sweetheart would overnight things with dry ice to Wisconsin salami and ham and fresh cheese curds, and I gave them to everybody in my unit. They said, what is this you talking about? I said, okay, next batch I will let you try some. And I changed some lives, yeah, with those cheese curds.
That's a good girlfriend, do that sort of stuff. Okay, so you were
anyway.
But I love the backstory. So you were traveling as the musician. Mm-hmm. Now, even though you've gone through basic training, so they teach you how to shoot,
yes.
and how to do all those
Every
maneuvers.
Marine, as we say, every Marine is a rifleman first.
Yes. And so, what would be your daily capacities then?
Well, it depended on what we had coming up on the calendar. Every morning started out the same. It was PT for about an hour and a half or 2 hours. And then we'd shower, change, and generally in the mornings when it was still fairly cool, we'd do our field drill. So out on the street or in the field block formation, we did a lot of change of commands, retirement ceremonies. So that was all fairly standard repertoire, marches, pass and reviews, things like that. A lot of Sousa material. So that was just kind of staying sharp, following the drum major and the mace commands and whatnot, staying sharp with that. So, and then we'd move inside, we'd maybe break into our different ensembles, depending on, like I said, whatever we had coming up on the calendar. If it was birthday ball season, which just passed, we played for our battalion and everybody else's. So we'd end up doing 5 to 10 different birthday balls in a season. Mm-hmm. So that's
Marine Corp birthday.
Yes.
For those that don't.
Yes, the Marine Corp birthday balls. So
and obviously if they gave birthday parties to every Marine on their birthdays.
Well, nobody would be left standing. The Marines can drink.
Yeah.
So there's that. We went on tour quite a bit throughout the year.
Did any of your fellow military people have any issue with the fact that you would not be seeing combat? Was there any of that rivalry?
Well, there was
or ribbing even?
Oh, absolutely. There was some rinksmanship. We prided ourselves because musicians in general, depending on which band you're in, there's 10 different fleet bands mostly around the continental U.S. And then there's us on Hawaii with the Marine Forces Pacific, and then the Okinawa band in Japan. And then there's the Commandant Zone and the President Zone. Those are in D.C. Those are kind of their own special units. They're OFP, we said, own program. The grunts kind of looked at us like they just pinned on our rank willy-nilly. We didn't really earn it, but we prided ourselves as being kind of the face of the Marines, because we did all these public tours and goodwill, good relations things, hearts and minds, if you will. So we had even extra qualifications that went into promotions. So everybody has, your rifle score, your PFT score, your physical fitness, your pros and proficiency in conduct marks, whether or not you're a good Marine in general, if you've gotten in trouble or not. But for us as well, we had our playing score. So we had to audition twice a year in front of our bandmaster and band officer. And every rank had its kind of base playing score you had to maintain. And then to be eligible for promotion, you had to. The theory was you always should be advancing in your technique and your mastery of your instrument. So if you weren't quite up to snuff for a promotion, everything else could be locked on. You could have a first class PFT, great pros and con marks, great expert rifle score. But if you're not quite playing up to where you should be, then you're going to be held back. Mm-hmm. So that was a big misconception. Was they threw on this rank because they wanted us to all look the same in uniform.
But so you were able to move up?
Yes, I did. Yes,
That's
I was.
fantastic.
It was a struggle for me because it was, the big fish in small pond moving into a small fish in a very big pond. When I was in high school, I was a section leader. I was first chair. I was what I thought very good at the time. And then I get to the Naval School of Music after boot camp, and I realize, oh no, I'm very behind.
Wow.
So I had a lot of catching up to do, and I worked with some just naturally gifted people. One of a good friend of mine who was from West Covina, he went to LA County High School for the Arts. And he and I were a class apart at the Naval School of Music. He went out to Oahu just about a month or so before I did. He was always first chair. He was just naturally gifted. He tutored me at the School of Music because I was struggling. But it was infuriating because mine was a practiced talent. His was just gifted talent. And but that's...
You were Salieri, he was Mozart.
Yeah, well, I guess you could look at it like that, just the tortured soul. So and even when I got to the fleet, it was never done. My Army instructor, God bless her, Staff Sergeant Wilson, because we had classes every day at the School of Music, and then you had, depending on your playing ability, you had private lessons with your instructor, and she was an Army instructor. It was a naval school, but the Marines and the Army also had detachments there, so we all studied together. And she said, when I squeaked by my graduation audition, I ran to her office. I said, Sergeant Wilson, I got it. And she said, I'm good work, congratulations, I'm proud of you, but this is just the beginning. Don't stop, never stop, never stop practicing. This is, once you get to the fleet, this is going to be a whole new animal. And she was not wrong.
Do you still play clarinet?
Very occasionally. That's why I was kind of segueing when I decided. So I did my 4. I was very near to re-enlisting, but the writing was on the wall. It got to feel too much like work. It crushed my soul because I loved music growing up. So I really took a long, hard look at what would, and my staff NCO retention SNCO said, this big stocky guy, Staff Sergeant Ramos, he said, Falk, I can keep you on Oahu, I can send you to jump school, you can get your wings, I can send you to embassy duty for a tour, you could do all these things. I was very near to doing it, and a re-enlistment bonus, but I just thought, no, I'd be doing it for the wrong reasons. I'd known about the Magic Castle for some time, and my mother's side of the family was from Southern California. I grew up in Wisconsin, where my dad's side's from, and my parents...
Town, Wisconsin?
Well, just a little bit south of Madison.
Okay.
So, go Badgers. And my parents had divorced when I was younger, and my mom had said, whatever you do after high school, I'll support you, but I'm moving back home. She was not counting on me going into the Marine Corps. She thought I was going to go to her alma mater, UCLA or Berkeley. Of course, my father wanted me to go to Madison, UW, where all of my dad's side had gone. Mm-hmm. So there was this push and pull between them, and I was their only child. So it was also another reason that I chose the Marines instead of staying in Wisconsin or moving out to California for school, because I knew I wasn't going to make both of them happy. And all of a sudden, this opportunity just dropped into my lap. So I said, I love you both, but I'm taking door number 3, and we'll see what happens with this. But as I said, music turns out was not what I wanted to pursue for the rest of my life, but I had a great time doing it while I was in the Marines. But going back to, I digress. So my mother had moved out here after I graduated high school. So I would then at Christmas, when we got leave, I would come stop here to see my mom and my grandmother and my mom's side of the family, and then go back to Wisconsin for the rest of Christmas to see my dad. Or
it's actually Christmas.
Well, yes, palm trees and then snow. Which was a little jarring, but you get used to it. After living on Oahu for 3 years, I was spoiled. Moving to LA was an easy choice. I mean, it's still a little bit shocking going back home at Christmas now, which I will be next month. It's very cold, and my father said it is unreasonably cold, in his words, right now. They just got another 4 feet of snow. Anyway, so I'd known about the castle, and I grew up also loving magic, because I was a bit of a sickly child. growing up in Wisconsin. I had terrible asthma for years and crippling allergies, and I grew up on a farm, my family's farm, which in the spring and summer was not conducive to playing and running around like young kids were wont to do. So I think right around 7 or 8, I got a little magic kit for my birthday or Christmas, as you do, as a lot of my friends did back then. You know, kids going to go through that magic phase. And I ate it up, and I took this thing with me everywhere. School, Cub Scout meetings, everywhere. And I drove everybody crazy with it. But I realized, after not really being able to have, playing and doing sports like most of my friends were doing, I had this almost effortless ability with magic to just captivate people with very little effort on my part and pull them in. I thought, oh, there's something here. There's something to this.
Do you remember what some of the first tricks were in the kit? In
this little box, there was a wand that you could make kind of magically shrink or grow. There was a rope trick. There was the ball and vase where you cover up the little ball and then it vanishes and you can bring it back. There was the one I got, I remember, that I carried with me always because I could fit in my pocket, was this little it was called the block and penny. It was this little kind of flat-ish square block of plastic and a penny, and you'd pass the block over the penny, and then you take it away, and it would turn into a dime. And it fascinated me. I did this for myself over and over, and I did it for my friends and everybody, and I do little magic shows in the living room, and I kept getting more. I'd save up my allowance, and I discovered a magic shop that's actually still there. One of the last few brick and mortar shops, I think, in the country. It must be by this point, thanks to the internet. This wonderful, sweet little old man and his wife, an Army veteran, and he runs this costume and magic shop back home. And once I discovered that was it.
What's it called? Is it still around?
Conjurer's Corner. Yes, I believe so. And when I was at two different years apart, most unfortunately, just the most sweet Christian couple, don't smoke, don't drink. One year I came home on leave, and he had gotten through some kind of throat cancer. Mm-hmm. He survived, but he lost a lot of weight. And then the next year I came home, I thought, please still be alive. Then his wife had gotten breast cancer. Mm-hmm. They both survived, thankfully. But anyway. But they held on to the shop. They live above the shop, and they really, I don't know what kind of business they do anymore. Half of his other building was also welding. He welded professionally. Mm-hmm. Because I can't imagine there's much money in a magic shop anymore. Sadly, I hate to say that.
Seattle Pike Place Market has some...
Yes, I know. I've been there many times.
Yeah, and it's always hopping.
I know. Well, it's when you're in a big touristy destination like that. Like there was a shop on Navy Pier in Chicago for many, many years that every time I went, it was just, but you get the tourist crowd, and they sell the touristy tricks, the light up thumbs and whatnot that aren't really even much of a secret anymore, unfortunately. But... yeah, he would actually take the time. It was like the old guard that I grew up reading books and watching old VHSs of, like that you'd go into the back room and you'd have to gain these guys' trust. They'd look at you like, who's this pipsqueak? And I kept going back, and he finally said, after maybe a month and a half or 2 months of this, he said, all right, kid, what's your story? You're not going away. Because he'd give me his standard sales pitch. He's like, "Oh, this is really hot." And these kind of self-working things, but I wasn't interested in that. I wanted to get past the nuts and bolts of this little kit that I'd gotten, and I wanted to read books and really start studying. And he said, "Okay, all right, I'll show you the real work." And that's when it really started to take root. And I started studying, and he loaned me some of his own books, and he said, "Go to the library. Here's the Dewey Decimal Code." It's kind of like runners who have the 26.2 sticker on their back. They're marathon runners. Magicians have the similar sticker, but it's 798.3. And that is the Dewey Decimal Code for magic, the magic section in a library. And it's the first time I saw that, I thought, oh, that's cool. Because that's so niche. It's like this little secret society that it's like runners have their thing. But I thought, that's so cool. This number that's meaningless to anybody else. But if you know it, you know it. You're in the club. I thought that was so cool. So I did. I got a library card, and that's where I lived, just studying from books, and that's where I still do. I've not really, that with the internet and YouTube and all of these videos that you can download,
for you,
it's not
books.
Very organic.
Yeah.
Because the thing with books is they give you the mechanics and the foundation, like you're building a house, and then they leave it up to you to build the rest, the frame and the roof and everything, and to decorate it, if you will, to make the routine your own and make it unique. But with videos, and I do have students that I take on occasionally, And I always start out the same way. I say, what's your background? Do you have any kind of foundation yet? Have you read anything? What have you watched? And I had this young man a couple of years ago. He said, I watch YouTube videos. And I cringed. I thought, okay. So I have to unlearn all of these bad habits and go back to square. Because when you do that, when you watch a video, yes, they might be teaching technique, but you just end up parroting what they do. It's mimicry, right down to their presentation and their scripting and everything. And that's fine, but it's not original. That's the thing about magic, is you have to make it your own instead of doing what somebody else is doing, because where's the fun in that?
Well, that's an interesting question. If all of or many of these tricks are in these books, how do you maintain the mystery and the...
Well, it's like I said, not everybody knows. You'd think it would, with the internet now, it's a little bit easier, accessible. These people do these how-to and these revealing videos on YouTube, which drives me absolutely crazy. But there is still, by and large, people don't want to put through the effort to just learn just for the sake of learning. Some people genuinely like the mystery of it. Muggles, yes.
Yeah, it's fun to go
It's like
watch.
when Ben Mesrick wrote his book, Bringing Down the House, about the MIT blackjack team that took Vegas a few years ago. And then they made the movie out of it, the 21, which yes, Spacey and Lawrence Fishburne, and the producer. I always love watching the special features when I get a DVD or now Blu-ray, I guess. And they said, somebody asked them, he said, or Ben Mesrick, the author of the book that the movie was based on, he said, aren't you worried about the people are going to go out and do this? Weren't the casinos worried when the production team rolled in to start filming that people were going to come in and start learning to count counts and count cards, not cows, sorry. And he said, no, actually, we really hope they do watch this movie, because they're never going to put in the time and the effort to actually learn this system. I don't think people want to get their fingers broken, so anyway,
Yeah, right.
I mean, I don't know if that happens anymore. It's not the days of Bugsy Siegel like it used to be.
When you were a kid, were you drawn to a particular magician?
Yes. Well, my first book set, maybe the pinnacle of magic books, was the Tarbell set. That was my first ever book, which there are 8. Professor Dr. Harlan Tarbell was one of the quintessential magic teachers, and his books are still. I mean, if what's what I tell my students: if you want to start somewhere, start with Tarbell. There's nothing you can't find. In the words of my now past good friend and mentor Denny Haney, he said he was always, if somebody would come in, some young kid or somebody would say, "Can you tell me what if I?" He said, "Look in Tarbell. Look in Tarbell. Look in Tarbell." It's because it is all there, and each book is kind of dedicated to different kinds of magic. So. But that's, like I said, going back to my previous point, that's why I love books, because it gives you the foundation, but it's up to you to build the rest, to make it your own.
Well, let's dig into that for a minute. So you learn about a trick in one of these books or whatnot,
sure.
And then you take that and now you have to layer it up so that it's not just the trick. It's like writing a song.
Well, yes. Well, it's like its own little miniature one act, like in 3 parts. It's like, okay, here's the beginning. It's the prestige. You've got the pledge. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm showing you. This ordinary something. The turn, I'm making it now do something extraordinary, and the prestige, the reveal. So it's really the rule of magic. The rule of 3s really heavily applies in magic. It's got a good rhythm. 1, 2, 3. Like a good trilogy. It's like why Bob Zemeckis didn't want to make a 4th Back to the Future. He said, no, 3's a good round number. I'm ending it. It feels right. A 4th one would feel gratuitous. It wouldn't. The cadence is wrong.
Are you listening, George Lucas?
Yes, you're welcome. I'm giving you all these plugs. But yeah, that rule very heavily applies in magic. So it's theatrical. I see so often, especially at the castle, very technically highly skilled magicians, doing things that I could never do with cards and coins in my wildest dreams. But they're they're not showmen, because it is a skill. That's something that I came into naturally, is not having stage fright. I loved being in plays and show choir growing up and whatnot, just being on the stage doing the talent shows. But that is something to be learned, just how to present yourself, but also how to make it engaging. Why should I care about what you're doing? That was one of the first lessons the entertainment director, Jack Goldfinger, at the Magic Castle. He books all the talent week to week. in all the showrooms.
It's a great name for a magician.
Well, Goldfinger and Dove. He and his lovely wife were very famous magicians at one point in their own right, and still are. They're still loved. But he said when I first approached him, not long after I became a member back in 2011 at the castle, right after I left the Marines, I approached him with an idea for an act that I had. And he said, okay, that's great, but he said, first, make me care, and then try to fool me. Why should I care about what you're doing? Okay, that's great, you're doing this. You're cutting and restoring a rope, seemingly magically. You're doing this, that, and the other. But why should I as the audience care about what you're doing? Where's the emotional hook? And that really stuck with me. That was kind of a way I was trying to verbalize it myself for so many years. But he gave that verbiage for me. He put that into the words that I'd been looking for. He said, make me care, and then try to fool me. Don't just, here's something that I can't do. Because that's what I see. The magicians turn it into like this, they're not against the audience, but they turn it into this puzzle. Like, here's something I can do that you can't do. Be impressed. And that's
which feels patronizing.
Yes,
right.
Because it's not... Very few performers I know, and comedians as well, can pull off that kind of snarky, like this thing. It's almost a challenge. You really have to own that. I can't do it. I don't like that because a wonderful British performer, one of the first, if not the first, I think, to ever fool Penn and Teller on their show, John Archer. He's got that very kind of dry British wit. Gazzo is another one. He's a street performer, very well-known British street performer. The Cups and Balls, and they have that kind of dry wit. They can get away with that.
He said cups and balls.
Yes.
Just so you know, it was not cup the ball.
No, cups and balls. Yes. Thank you.
The Penn and Teller show, when I told my dad that I was going to be, that I was having you on the show, he'd heard of you. He said, I think I saw him on the Penn and Teller show. And I said,
Thank you, Father.
Isn't that wild?
I was just somewhere recently. Saturday evening this past, I was downtown at the Cicada Club, an old Art Deco dinner and dance club. My girlfriend was singing with Phil Crosby, Bing Crosby's grandson, and somebody at the table right next to us said, Are you Frederick Falk? I said, oh God, here we go. But it's interesting. It's like I have a handful of friends who are very well busy working actors, and whenever I'm out with them, they get that, and I say, is this what that feels like? But they said, actually, twice. They said, well, you went Fool Us a few seasons ago, and did I see you at the Magic Castle once? I said, well, yes to both. Thank you.
Let's talk about that show for a second.
Oh, yes, Fool Us.
Fool Us. And it's Penn and Teller, have magicians come on.
Yes.
And mentalists.
Yes, magicians. I've even seen a couple of variety artists, if you will. I saw there was a sword swallower that I know that was on, that kind of turned that into a bit of a magic effect.
Mm-hmm. And then
So you go, if you are, it's not like America's Got Talent. It's not, you don't audition for them. They find you. The first U.S. season, back in 2015 was when I was contacted by the talent producer. He said, we're casting for because it had started in Britain initially, and then they canceled it despite it doing very well. I don't know why. And then the CW picked it up and brought it over here to the States. And that first season was when I was contacted out of the blue by Darren Toon. Hi, Darren. The talent producer, who I think still is. And he said, here's who I am, where I assume you know who Penn and Teller are. We're looking for talent for this first U.S. season. And I came across your website and YouTube channel, which was saying a lot back then, a website that I built myself, which was awful, and my YouTube channel, which had 2 very terrible videos on it. I said, really? Thank you. What do you need from me? He said, well, send me your go-to, your favorite effect, your pet routine, and a backup, so I can show the other producers. And I did. I actually went and filmed something with my good friend, Tad, who's a wonderful magician himself. He's an editor. At the time, he was working at Paramount. He said, come to the studio, we'll find a space, and we'll shoot something. And he cut it together for me. It looked marvelous. I'm still convinced that he's the reason I was selected in the first place. I tried to do a demo tape myself, and it was awful. So he said, look, I'll help you. So I sent it in, and I don't know how many dozens or hundreds of magicians they contacted. There's generally about 30 per season, because they do 4 magicians per episode. And then, yes, I ended up getting selected. They flew me out to Vegas for about a week. And so, yes, that's the premise, is you go out, you do one effect for them, they deliberate, they have to try to figure out how you did it. And I've since then become somewhat infamous for having argued with them at great length. If people still remember this, I know I do. Not because I was trying, as I even said to them, I'm not trying to be belligerent, but you're not quite there. And it's gone around and around the internet in these years since. And people still ask me at the castle and other magicians when I do shows, they said, do you still get questions about that? Because even the internet went wild after that, after my episode first aired. Because there was even some speculation around some of the magic forums as to whether I had or not. I hold no ill will towards them. It was a pleasure and a privilege to do the show. It was at that time, at 25, the pinnacle of my magical career. My first national TV appearance. I loved it. It was amazing. I still get work because of that. It's still right at the top of my website.
Yeah.
But there's I'll
put links on Hey Human for it.
There's still some debate every now and again. It pops up. I see. It's like, do you remember that? What are your thoughts? I said, I'm well out of it.
Were they wrong? What their theory?
Well, without revealing anything, what Penn and I went back and forth about was, I did an effect with a watch. Those of you who were listening that might have remembered the episode. In a nutshell, I did an effect with a watch. One of my first mentalism routines, because I was still getting very new to mentalism at that time. I kind of started going way back to earlier in the conversation. You said kind of magic versus mentalism. Most people start out with close-up magic, the foundations, sleight of hand, misdirection, the psychological principles. And then if you progress into it long enough, if you stick with magic, then later on, and if you kind of have the finances to do it, you can branch out into different styles of magic. Stay with close-up or kind of cabaret, nightclub style, stage big illusions, Vegas, you think, the box illusions we call them, or mentalism. And I discounted that branch of magic for years just because, as many people would do when they don't understand something, they just kind of ignore it. I thought, oh, that's that weird...
Witchy woo?
Yeah, just because I didn't get it. I thought, no, that's that weird, that psychic stuff, and I didn't really... But I realized I was being incredibly ignorant, just in not giving it its diligence, just by studying it, at least, just giving it a once-over. So I did this effect with the watch where, and Simon Pegg, if you remember, was lucky enough to be my assistant, or me lucky enough to be doing magic for him, as Penn said. Wow, that was amazing itself. You had Simon. Obviously, that wasn't random. They had planned that. Unbeknownst to me, they didn't tell me that when we start rolling. And Jonathan Ross, the host at the time, introduces him. You can still hear my voiceover. They cut away from me to Simon getting up out of the audience, but you can still hear me saying, "Oh my God!"
Yeah. Great.
I thought, oh, okay, gotta hold this together.
Simon Pegg is a genius. I love him.
Yes, and we had a lovely chat afterwards. Hi, Simon, if you happen to be listening.
Oh, I hope to God you are.
I did meet him again years later, just in passing, and he said, "Oh, I still remember that. It was a lot of fun. He was a peach. He was a wonderful assistant." But. There was, anyway, I digress again. There was some great debate about that. So I did the effect with the watch, and Simon had no idea, obviously, because Penn actually called him back up out of his seat after I had released him back into the audience, and he asked him some questions. I don't know what, but he was really centered around the watch. So Simon chose a time, unbeknownst to him. He spun the stem on the watch, and then I showed him the time he stopped at. And then he holds the watch in between his hands, and I divine the time. I read his mind, and I get the time that he was thinking of, and then the hands on the watch disappear. I've always been fascinated with the concept of time, and I use that theme in a lot of my shows. And he was very taken with it. He was very impressed, and Penn started really going on this tangent about the watch. Could you have done it with a digital watch? And I said, well, that wouldn't really even be the same effect, because the hands disappear where he had seen them. Like, I kind of inceptioned him into seeing the time on the watch, and so anyway, ultimately it was ruled that I did not. They had to go all up to the producers.
I remember there was a
Mike Close and Johnny Thompson, rest in peace, the two brilliant producers and technical advisors of the show. They have to have obviously some metric for, otherwise everyone would just say, no, you didn't get it. So they have to have someone who do some kind of a scientific, a control group who knows how it's done, but isn't going to tell them unless they absolutely need to. So we actually did. Jonathan Ross, he said, you know what, I'm going to cut this short. We're going to go up to the two guys who know how it's done, and It was funny. Johnny Thompson later, after the show was done, they released the audience, and we did shaking hands and the pictures and everything. Johnny came out and he said, you were close, but you didn't quite get it.
Yeah. Now, was that something that you had to show them the joke before?
Yes. It's okay.
The magician beforehand.
So yes, when you get to Vegas, you a couple days before your taping, you go into the green room, and you're with the DP and the sound department, because they want to make sure they get all the technical specs right. I've never been treated so well as a performer ever, as an actor or as a magician, than I was by that entire crew. It was the best, one of the best experiences I've ever had as a performer. So they took me, just because they said, what kind of camera angles are good for you? Where do you need your mic? What kind of wardrobe were you wearing? It's really, really all well done.
And you were very dapper that day.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, that was.
Your look is very, your socks to your
Well, I love everything vintage. Particularly for me, my expression is in the attire. Some people drive old cars, some people really get into the music. I love the fashion and the music as well, of the Edwardian kind of up through the 40s period. Yes. So, but that was with my cutaway coat and my spats and my cravat, that was a very Edwardian look.
It was great.
So we did a tech rehearsal with Johnny Thompson and Mike Close, the two technical advisors on the show, before we did the taping, just so they knew how. For that, like I said, that kind of control group, they knew how it was done. So there's some accountability there. So yes, they know how it's done, but Penn and Teller obviously do not. That's what they're trying to figure out.
Sure.
So.
And Penn and Teller know so many tricks. They've
been together now as a professional duo for I think over 40 years. Teller he was a community college professor, I believe, and Penn came from the circus world, and they met years ago, and they just formed this this perfect.
And have made quite the career out of it.
Oh, absolutely.
I had Martin Olson on the show, who was lovely and delightful, and he used to write for Penn and Teller.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Write the comedy.
Oh, marvelous.
Yeah, so pretty neato.
Small world.
What then began your moving just from magic into mentalism? And firstly, let's give a description as to what mentalism is.
Okay, so magic versus mentalism. This actually opened my shows with this. I say for you muggles in the audience that don't know what mentalism is.
No one will admit to being a muggle.
Well, I always get a good laugh, which is why I keep that line. So I kind of say, yes, my name is Frederick Falk. As our host said, or whoever introduced me, I am a magician, but more specifically, I am a mentalist. Now, I see the eyebrows going up around the room. For those of you muggles who don't know what the flip is, mentalism, allow me to give you the short answer. It is mind reading. But I sometimes specify, depending on what type of show I'm doing. I'm not a psychic. I don't know. I can't see the future, so don't ask me. I'm not a medium. I don't talk to your long lost relatives. I use the techniques that I use are, as a mentalist, as a mind reader, are influence, intuition, psychology, a little bit of mental misdirection, and generally a lot of luck. Now, none of that is a lie. It's just not the whole truth. I can't give you everything, but I give them enough to nibble on.
Sure.
So I kind of think, because a lot of people, they have these kind of different ideas of what mentalism is. They think, you're a psychic, you read tarot cards. So is it very esoteric? So is it the occult?
I watched a French mentalist whose name I do not recall.
Oh, not Jan.
I think maybe he was Israeli, actually. He was not French.
Not Ozzy, was it? Not Ozzy Wind?
I cannot remember his name, but he's been on James Corden a lot.
Yes.
And what was fascinating about that guy when I was watching is that he could get people to do things with suggestion. So he would suggest.
NLP, that is another way when I say influence.
Yeah, sure.
NLP, Darren Brown is big with this. That's a lot of what he employs in his shows. In the over and above being an outstanding mentalist, he really has mastered that psychological part of getting inside people's heads, not in a negative way, but just understanding people, how people think and how people work. And yes, getting them to do things.
Micro movements, maybe in the face.
Well, it's very. I liken it to a poker player reading the tells of the player sitting across from him. So yes, micro expressions, muscle movements. It's breathing. It's like cold reading. The techniques are very similar.
What was that show? There was a show, The Mentalist.
Yes,
and
yes.
So that's what he...
Well, that was kind of him faking being to help them solve crimes.
Right. He would fake being a psychic, but in reality, he was a mentalist.
Yes, that's what he was. He was an out of work, I think, if I remember correctly. But he employed many cold reading techniques to try to catch the criminals. Mm-hmm. But yes.
Even though that's fiction, it was still fun to watch. Anyway, so back to you.
Yes. And I depending on what I get hired for events and whatnot, I still do practice close-up every day just to keep it fresh. I practice the material that I have I have 3 different sets, kind of standard go-to routines, acts that I do, ranging from anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour, depending, again, what I get hired for. And some of that is, and the venue. I always ask the same questions when I first if it's a cold call. If it's a repeat client, I generally know what they want, especially this time of year around the holidays. I do a lot of corporate holiday events. So those are a lot of repeat clients that I have throughout the years. So I know what they want, what they're looking for. But if it's a cold call, I always ask the same things. Where is it? When is it? How long do you want the entertainment to be? So the venue will dictate this. I'm not going to do close-up in a theater. I'm doing a corporate holiday event in a couple of weeks at the Belasco Theater downtown. I'm not going to be doing close-up for 1,000 people for this holiday event. So that dictates the material that I do and the show that I will give them. What really, the best resource, now living in LA and being a member of the Magic Council, is the library. Yes. It is one of the 2 biggest single collections of magic literature and media in one place, other than the Magic Circle Library in London. We even have a restricted section that's behind a locked wooden and glass door. Yes, I love that. Only the librarian has a key to. So it's very much like Harry Potter. We have our old first editions, out of print, impossible to find books signed by Houdini, things like that.
Any Aleister Crowley stuff in there? Is he?
That's an excellent question. Well, we do have a few esoteric things. I'd have to go back and look. I'm so rarely in that section because I did just in my fanboy, my inner magic geek when I first became a member. And you have to put on gloves to handle things. But I didn't really look in there because they are quite delicate. And then we have other copies, newer copies of things. So it's more or less just for the nostalgic value. But it also lends enormous value to our collection as a whole. But that was the single best resource for me when I became a member. As a performer, as a magician, they have books on theory, on every single kind of magic, and biographies and technique. They have books on the circus side, and juggling and ventriloquism, and clowning and miming. So that's when I really started to... And there were a couple of effects that I was already doing. The effect with the watch that I did on Fool Us, and a card effect that's the tossed out deck. So I take a deck of cards out, I shuffle it, then I put a rubber band around it, and I toss it out into the audience to 4 or 5 different members. I have them stand, and they crack open the deck somewhere, peek at a card, memorize it, and then I never see the deck. I don't touch the deck again. And then I take a few moments, and I say, just think of the cards that you saw in your mind. Then I name the 4 or 5 cards, and I say, if you just heard me name your card, please sit down. And everybody sits down. Now, I was doing this in the middle of just my standard kind of magic act. And so it was what people call a mental magician. There's this big kind of divide between true mentalists and magicians who just do mental magic. They'll maybe throw something like that in the middle of their act, and mentalists kind of get a little uppity about that. They say, oh, you're cheapening it a little bit almost. Is the argument that I've heard. And I thought, oh, well, and then after Fool Us, really, then I thought, oh, there's something to this. I was getting the greatest reactions from these single 2 effects out of the rest of my repertoire. So I really started pouring myself into the study of mentalism, where it comes from. Did it come from kind of from the spiritualist movement around the turn of the last century? And the Victorians were obsessed with this. And then...
Yeah, Lilydale in New York has a bunch of mentalists.
And there was a very famous girl, Anna Fay, who was born in the late 1800s in Ohio and was discovered, I quote unquote, I'm doing finger quotes, by a very unscrupulous, fraudulent magician, medium, or exposer of fraudulent mediums, whatever was playing better at the time, by the name of H. Melville Fay. And she was born Anna Heathcliff. But he discovered her, and she was told, not discovered, but told at the ripe old age of 10 that she was a medium for the spirits of the other side. And under his tutelage, she became Anna Eva Fey, this very famous spiritualist. And then when the star of spiritualism finally started to wane in the 20s, right around when Houdini was going on his crusade to expose all these fraudulent psychics and mediums that were taking people for their their homes and their fortunes and their inheritances, she transitioned. She pivoted seamlessly into, instead of conjuring ghosts from the minds of her audiences, into conjuring thoughts. So she transitioned just impeccably into what would become one of the early 20th century's foremost mentalists and performers. I still do. One of my favorite effects is something that she was famous for doing. But it was kind of the crux of it. So that was one of the first effects that I remember reading about, and that's why I'm so thankful to have the resource of the Castle Library. And then I just started, this is. I realized that I kicked myself for my years of ignorance for discounting this amazing branch of magic.
So on that card trick where you have people stand up and such, do you have people afterward when you do the big reveal that you know what they had? Do they corner you and try and get these secrets? Oh, absolutely. I get it every single time. It doesn't matter what. If I meet someone at a bar and I do something with a cocktail napkin, it's like, I always get three things. Oh, can you tell me how you did that? How did you do that? Mm-hmm. Can you make my wife disappear? Mm-hmm. Can you tell me what the lottery numbers are going to be? So, no, and no. Say no. One of the cardinal rules, you never do repeat the same effects twice, with very few exceptions that you can. Well, how do you do that if you're getting an act together?
What do you mean, repeating the same? Well, there are very few effects because more or less you do this one effect and it has the same outcome. There are some that will have a different outcome every time that you can repeat without risking exposing the method. But really, you don't, because if you show somebody something, especially a clever person, you show it to them more, even twice, and they might be able to start backtracking it in their mind. Which is another reason why I love mentalism so much, because when done well, it's like the violin or the oboe. It either sounds really good or it sounds like a dying duck. Mentalism is very much the same. I've seen wonderful mentalists who are very engaging and captivating, and I've seen terrible mentalists. Because that more than anything else, it requires a lot of talking, whereas some other kinds of magic can be very showy and expositional, and can be done to music and are very visual. Mm-hmm. Mentalism requires you really, your performance skills have to be absolutely razor sharp.
Is there anything that you can do?
You have to be engaging because there is so much talking.
Yeah.
Getting thoughts out of people's minds and giving them instructions on what to do. You have to be very clear and precise in your directions and what you want them to do, because it is a process like anything else. There is a technique to it. As I said before, influence, intuition. I studied a little bit of linguistic communicational psychology in college, and which was enormously helpful. Just kind of how people interact with each other, but through a communicational standpoint, and even non-verbally, like I said, cold reading and body cues and whatnot. So there's a lot that goes into it that I can't really describe like you would describe other kinds of magic, close-up card tricks, or even cabaret magic, the bigger kind of not stage, but bigger than close-up. So smaller illusions, which comes from the old Victorian parlor magic, when a performer would come into the homes of the wealthy, the aristocracy, and in their sitting room, their parlor, and do this kind of medium-sized show for 30 or 40 guests for a dinner party. And so that's my favorite kind of magic.
I've read some really cool historical books about the spiritualism movement. Yes. I'll put those on the website too, because they were really cool. Mm-hmm. Other Powers was one. I've read a couple books on Lily Dale.
Yes.
I feel
and like the Fox sisters and
so cool. Mm-hmm. It's just fun and interesting. Do you have any that you can do over audio? It's probably more a visually thing.
There are some that I've heard done on the radio, and I should have prepared something. Maybe we can do a follow-up sometime. There is one thing I thought of, but it requires me calling somebody. And I did try before I got here, but they were sadly unavailable.
Ah, bummer. Okay, yes. Cool.
It's something I would do for you, but then they reveal it on the other end.
Sure. That's
so it is, yes.
Huh.
But so maybe
next time.
Maybe a follow-up, yes.
Yeah, next time. Okay, so you started down the path of mentalism. Mm-hmm. Now, relatively recently, just within the past few years, since I've lived in Los Angeles and had access to the Castle Library. So there must be crazy growing pains with studying something like that.
After having already been so deeply entrenched in close-up, specifically the close-up style of magic, and parlor cabaret to an extent. Yes, there was a steep learning curve, because like I said, it's a whole new presentational style. It's not so much, here, look what I can do with cards and coins. Now it's getting inside people's heads, working with their thoughts, their feelings, their emotions. And it's a little bit like the Spider-Man thing. Like, with great power comes great responsibility, because one of that routine I do, the 3-envelope test that I recreate from Anna Fey, where I involve 3 different people, I've gotten some very intense reactions. I have made people cry, not because it was bad, but because it was so powerful. And that's that kind of thing. And you have to be careful, really, not to abuse that. And just be sensitive to those, and be cognizant of what kind of information you're dealing with. Because when I say, think of maybe a relative that you had a very strong connection with, but who's passed, I want you to write down their name on a note card, seal it inside of an envelope that I never see. And then I ask them questions about, I start to get a sense. I just say, think of this person, think of your relationship. And I say, this was a woman, this was an elderly woman on your mother's side. And this I remember I'm speaking about this particular show I did at the castle a few years ago. And sometimes I don't like to play 20 questions. If I'm not getting the hits right away, I'll move on, because I don't want it. I don't want it to just seem like I'm fishing for the answer. Is it clicking in your head? Then?
Yeah,
you're saying? I'm getting, okay, this is a woman. You had a very strong tonight. This is your grandmother. This is your maternal grandmother on your mother's side. And she broke down. She's already, and then I've got a big kind of art notepad. And I say, and I always remember this. Adelaide was this woman's name, which is, it's one of those kind of old classical names, kind of from that time, like Maud or Beatrice, or I'll never forget that. And even before I got her, and then I'll say, just think of her name, and I write down the name on my notepad, and I'll put that face down. I say, I'm already committed to this. Would you? Then I tear open her envelope and I read the name. I say, Adelaide. But she actually wrote down her nickname. She wrote down Addie, which is what I wrote down. I said, one of the questions I asked her was did you weren't thinking of, did your grandmother have a nickname? And this woman, she's losing it. And I said, she passed relatively recently, and that could be variable, but I said, within the past couple of years, so this is still very fresh for you, and she's just, at this point, she can't speak. And I opened the envelope, and it's Addie, and that's what I wrote down. And so that's one of the, and I realized, not from a maniacal standpoint, but I said, there is really something to this, over and above the best sleight of hand that I've ever seen, which is like Shin Lim, who fooled Penn and Teller twice, I think, who recently won America's Got Talent, does things with cards and coins that I could never do in my wildest dreams. But that's kind of how I look at these very powerful tools as a mentalist. I look at that kind of in the same way. The effects that it can have on a spectator or an entire audience.
You mentioned earlier when you came in that your mother's profession.
So my mother was a career criminal defense attorney. Her professional life. And what did she say? She said, and with something, so as an actor and as a magician, essentially I lie to people for a living. I say my last one-man magic show was entitled Confessions of an Honest Liar. My life spent is in the world of legerdemain, pulling the wool over people's eyes. She always said, dealing with clients and being in the courtroom, she said, if you're ever talking to someone, or if you need to tell if they're lying, or if you're confronting somebody with something unpleasant, watch how they react. People don't get mad at lies; they get mad at the truth.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so.
And you can really in a way you can definitely apply that.
How has that affected your own personal relationships? Do you always know when someone's lying?
Well, and then when I really started going back a little bit previously in the conversation, studying the books of Darren Brown and his techniques and kind of cold reading and things like that, and the communicational psychology courses I took in my undergrad. It was a little disappointing to now realize, putting these things into practice in the real world, and realizing without even trying to do it, because I've had friends say, "Are you doing this to me?" Like when I'm not. I've had dates in the past. I took early on, a few years ago, I took a girl that we'd very newly been seeing each other, and I took her to a show that I was doing. this kind of underground dark cabaret show, and she saw me do this effect with a die, with a playing die, like from a board game, where that's kind of then some of the influence portion. I kind of influenced the person to choose the numbers on the die that I want them to. What they think it's a free choice. And then she and I went out for a drink afterwards, and she said, that thing you did with the die was, do you do that? Have you done that to me? Do you do that with your friends? I said, no. That's, I realized that you could use these things for very nefarious purposes. But no, I definitely draw the line at, it's like when I go and have friendly card games with my friends. They know what I'm capable of, but in the early years, they would pass the deck they would skip. We'd pass the dealer on the table as we were playing. I'd say, if you guys feel comfortable, I'll pass the deal. So I'll pass it to the next person instead of. Then they finally realize, because we play quarters or whatnot. But that's talking about getting your fingers broken. I don't want to alienate people, and nor. That's all just an ethical thing.
Have you ever read the book, The Men Who Stare at Goats?
Yes.
I love that book.
And the movie was quite ridiculous. But
the movie is nothing like the book.
No, it's not. They took a lot of license with that, but yes.
What did you think about that?
If I ever find out that there's source material behind something, I'll always go to the source material first. I thought, well, I could see a little bit of this in what I do. Especially, it's the government and the military have a long history of very, very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Experimentation?
Well, but very, very unorthodox methods.
Yes.
It's like when the LSD movement, when they were trying to, yes, absolutely. I just had a really interesting NPR article about that some weeks ago, about how they were trying to induce that in people.
And there's a form of mind control, obviously, in basic training. They're trying to turn.
Oh, absolutely. Well, they're trying to bring. Yes, there is a lot. In the Marines, not just because we have the longest, and it's generally the most challenging boot camp of the services outside of the special branches, the special forces. But it is, yes, they're trying to instill in you, break down who you were, and build you back up the way they want you to. That sounds a little bit barbaric, but it really does. I mean, that's what you need in a good soldier, Marine, sailor, airman. You need to be able to keep, not lose your mind under stressful conditions,
right? And
to be able to follow protocol.
They need to know who will lose their mind.
Yes, because that's in boot camp we started with about 120, and we graduated about 65 or 70 in my platoon.
It's certainly not
for various reasons.
I wish that there were programs to then unravel them back into normalcy.
Right, and that's what a lot of things, without totally getting on a whole different tangent about veterans' mental health. But that's why it's so hard for, especially combat veterans, to reintegrate into civilian society. But that's a whole other. That's not today.
No, it's not. So you perform a lot at the Magic Castle?
So there's two ways you can perform. As when you're booked for the week, so the lineup changes every week. So when you're booked in one of the showrooms, the close-up gallery, the parlor of prestidigitation, yes, I said it, the Palace of Mystery, there's also a bar venue and another small theater that open up on the weekends to accommodate extra performers and the extra weekend crowds. So that, when you're booked for that, that's for the full week, Monday through Sunday. And depending on which venue you're in, you can do anywhere 3 to 4 shows a night. So it's a very long week, but it's a lot of fun. Or there's little for the magician members. There are these little impromptu spaces around the club at which you can perform. You kind of there's a list. You sign up for the night, and you can do these little impromptu 15-20 minute sets just for anybody who's there. And that's really where I started cutting my teeth when I first became a member. I was there almost every night of the week for a year. Mostly I'd go early, right when the doors opened at 5, and I'd go into the library for an hour or two, then I'd get some dinner, and then I'd start working on the material that I was studying.
10,000 hours is what you did.
Yes. And it was really, really helpful. It's still the pressure of that's one of the reasons why the auditions for membership are so competitive and the qualifications are so stringent, because they want to make sure they're not letting in some hack, somebody that's going to represent the club well. When you do these impromptu shows, the privilege of having that opportunity in these different spaces.
I've got a couple questions. One,
yes.
Do you believe in what I like to call the woo-woo, other realms or possibilities? And two, what has this journey taught you about yourself and other people? Because I'm sure it's given you
absolutely.
super duper
yes.
insight. Into
so let's see. Answer one. So you mean other realities, like parallel universes? Or?
And whatever it means to you, however you want to answer that question.
Yes, I think. And having studied philosophy as well in my undergrad and everything that goes with that, let's say it's like I had this argument with my mom for years. I think, she believed that we're the only ones in the universe. I think the planets that we've discovered that are possible of sustaining life and out of the 10 to the nth power stars that there are in just the known universe, I think it's somewhat naive to think that there. I don't mean like you or me or little green men, but some form of other life. Mm-hmm. Whether we ever like the Fermi paradox, where they're just too far away to get to us, or us to them. That's why we haven't made contact yet.
Or have we?
Well.
But what about the ghosties and the things like that?
Yeah, okay. So that I've always remained very open-minded about that. I have friends who are genuine mediums. I attended Zachariah the Witch, a wonderful, delightful human, and a very gifted reader and spirit medium. He hosted a very intimate seance some time ago at my friend's shop, D.L. Marcus and Company in Hollywood, where I've done many of my own shows. It was very intimate. There were only about 10 of us around the table, and he asked us to think each of about someone who was passed. And my mother passed 3 years ago. It was just 3 years this Halloween weekend. So it was coming up on that. So but we didn't tell him anything. We didn't write anything down. He did the opening and opened kind of the door for any entities to come in. And he told some people and these are people that he'd not met before. It wasn't like he went digging around through their garbage. But I've always remained very open-minded. And, yes.
Did your mom bring you a message?
Yeah. Zachariah said he gave me something that she did. It apparently told him. So
that's lovely.
Yeah, I said, and it was not just a reach. Like when I'm doing my cold reading techniques, there's a little bit of kind of treading the waters and seeing what sticks and what doesn't. And if something does, I'll go with that. I'll say, I got a reaction from them. I'm going to go with that. That's what cold reading is, Barnum statements. But I don't use those broad blanket statements. I try to get as specific as I can, like the woman when her grandmother and the name that was so clear to me right away. So it wasn't something he wasn't reaching. It was something very specific that I can absolutely imagine her having said.
I love that.
So
that's wonderful.
And the second, how has this affected me, you said?
As a person and how you see humanity.
Well, yes, it has definitely given me a different perspective. As an actor, you're always taking on becoming different people. Depending on what your process is. I'm not Brando. I'm not method. I don't jump into it quite like that. But it's a character study. It's an inhumanity. When you get to become someone else for however long or short of time. And I've done a fair number of television shows this past year. And so I love the television as a medium, as an actor, more than a feature film, because with television, depending on how long your character is there, what kind of an arc you have, you've got this room to kind of grow and expand and really just explore this character. Whereas a movie, you've got 90 minutes or 2 hours and then it's it. Unless it's saga or something, but really you've got a beginning and an end, and that's your character only exists inside that universe. So, but yes. So to answer your specific question, it has given me a lot of perspective and kind of how I navigate the world and how I deal with people, both on a personal and professional level. Just kind of with things to look out for and kind of red flags. Okay, here's this person's not. It's like that person who's always late for a meeting and blames traffic or always coming up with excuses. I say, no, I don't have time for that. That was one big thing I miss about the structure of the military is the accountability and just that kind of sense of personal integrity and that sense of pride in your work. And that's something that I've noticed is lacking, especially in LA, because there's so many people are trying to get something from you. What can I? Now the friendships that I've cultivated, and I've had many come and go, but the ones that I've kept, and it is a very tight circle in these 8.5 years that I lived here. I got a sense right away that was not what it was. I met them all mostly very organically through the castle or just socially. like I said, there's some peripheral circles. One of my old acting teachers at AMDA used to say, think of your friendship like a mountain. It's like the base of it, they're right at the base of the mountain. That's kind of like people you are acquainted with, and then as you go up, those circles get tighter. Then the summit, that's the people that will you're ride or die, if you will. That you see all the time, will do anything for, you will do anything for them. So, but we have it's transparency. That's I think what it comes down to.
So
is trust.
You see people differently.
Yes. I think I have. Yeah, I look at it. Magic is really, it's all in the details. And how I explain it to people in general is it's like creative problem solving. Here's something, an ordinary thing. What can I do with this? How can I make this pencil turn into a feather duster or what have you? How can I make this microphone that I'm staring at levitate in front of you? So it's creative problem solving, but do that in such a way where you can't see what I'm doing and make it seem magical. So yes, I do look at things. It forces you to look at things in a different way. It's creative problem solving, looking at things literally outside of the box. Yeah. That maybe other people don't quite have that perspective, and that's one of the things I love about it, because it's like photographers. Depending on what kind of photography you practice, it's if it's headshots or portraits but they're always looking at things around you, observing the world through a different lens. Quote to
sure.
Use that analogy.
Yeah, absolutely. So how can people find you?
So my Instagram is at Fortissimo Magic, FORTISSIMO Magic. Let's see, Twitter is at Fred Falk Magic, or my website is fredfalkmagic.com. It's just FREDFALK magic.com.
And I'll put links to all that on Hey Human Podcast. And this has really been a great time for me.
Well, I'm glad, yes.
I love this kind of stuff. And ever since I was little, I've loved magic, and I'm always bummed out at the people because there's always those people in the audience that are like, "That's not real, that's magic." I'm like, just let go.
It amazes me just to button it up. That you say that, especially when I'm at the castle. If I'm there by myself in an evening, I'll spend especially if I've seen the performer before, I'll watch the audience watch them, and it's amazing to me. It's always these really bro-y guys. When we leave the showroom, we go to the bar. I'll kind of listen to them and say they'll try to impress their wives or their girlfriends and say, "Oh yeah, this is how we did it." I'm saying, "Oh honey, you're adorable. You could not be so wrong." But then there's these people just sitting there crossed arms the whole time. It's people I've noticed that are very type A executives and CEOs, people in great positions of power that don't like not knowing how something's done.
Well, they feel they're being tricked.
Well, right. And people say, why did you come to the magic castle? You knew what you were going to see. Why do you do this to yourself?
I like being tricked in those kinds of circumstances.
Yes. I think there's it's why I got into magic. I love it. It's that, not because I'm trying to pull one over on people, but it's because it's that sense of bringing you into my world where anything could be possible again, making you feeling like a child, but when maybe whatever's going on with your life outside the doors of the club or the theater or the castle, if whatever's going on personally, financially, professionally, if I can bring you into my world for a split second with that reveal or that sense, give you that sense of wonder again, then that to me is real magic.
I agree 100%, and that's the best part of it is it does elicit that feeling of wonder.
Yeah.
And
because people deep down, we have this, it's built into our DNA, this longing from the moment we're born, this curiosity to know how, if we don't understand something, we want to know.
Sure.
But also there's a magic in not knowing as well, and just kind of letting it happen.
There's a magic in letting go as well. And that's a beautiful thing too. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Super fun. And maybe you come back again and you could do some things
absolutely.
with others. Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Bye. Thanks for listening. Please rate and review on iTunes.